Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Tensions are at a boiling point after India carried out airstrikes on 9 targets in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, killing more than 100 terrorists. An Indian press briefing also reveals that Pakistan targeted 15 cities in northern and western India on the night of Operation Sindoor, which India says is still ongoing. Meanwhile, India says it has neutralised air defence systems in Lahore and Sialkot amid ongoing LOC ceasefire violations from Pakistan. Following action in Lahore, the US consulate has told citizens to shelter in place. Vladimir Putin has welcomed Xi Jinping to the Kremlin, seeking a diplomatic lift amid the war in Ukraine. The two leaders met with full ceremony as an agreed ceasefire with Ukraine takes effect ahead of the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow tomorrow. Meanwhile, Ukraine has accused Russia of breaching the 3-day ceasefire. Ukraine says Russia is attacking across the entire front, while Russia's army says it is observing the truce but responding to Ukrainian attacks. Cardinals have returned to the Sistine Chapel for a second day of the papal conclave. Black smoke has come from the chimney in the Vatican, signalling that no pope has been chosen after 2 further votes today. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he is unsure on the condition of 3 of the 24 hostages previously thought to be alive. Meanwhile, at least 33 Palestinians have reportedly been killed in Israeli strikes on a Gaza restaurant and market, according to local medics. The United States and the United Kingdom are poised to unveil a deal to lower tariffs, the first since US President Donald Trump's Liberation Day. An announcement will be made at the White House at 10 a.m. local time, while Trump has hailed the deal on social media. Police have arrested dozens of Columbia students occupying the main library in a pro-Palestinian demonstration. Around 80 have reportedly been detained with plastic zip ties used to cuff demonstrators. We start this hour. According to a statement released by the Indian government, India has confirmed that on the night of the 7th into the morning of the 8th of May 2025, Pakistan attempted to engage a number of military targets in northern and western India using drones and missiles. These attacks were neutralised effectively by the integrative counter-UAS grid and air defence systems. The debris of these attacks is now being recovered from a number of locations that prove the Pakistani attacks. In response, the Indian Armed Forces targeted air defence radars and systems in various locations within Pakistan. Meanwhile, Pakistan has increased the intensity of its unprovoked firing across the line of control, using mortars and heavy caliber artillery in areas in many sectors in Jammu and Kashmir. Due to Pakistani firing, 16 innocent lives have been lost, including 5 children. Here too, India was compelled to respond to bring mortar and artillery fire from Pakistan to a halt. The Indian Armed Forces have reiterated their commitment to non-escalation in a statement issued by the Indian government. Additionally, according to government sources, the Indian Defence Minister said that India eliminated at least 100 terrorists in precision strikes on terror camps inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. He is also said to have stated that the operation against Pakistan has not yet ended. This comes as India has neutralised Abdul Rauf Azar, the operational head of Jaish-e-Mohammed, the mastermind of the IC-814 hijacking in Operation Sindoor. Rauf was the brother of terrorist Masood Azhar, who is a UN-designated international terrorist. Meanwhile, the Indian External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar has also issued a stern warning, saying that India would respond to any Pakistani military action. Speaking to the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who was on a visit to India, this is what the External Affairs Minister said.
Our response was targeted and measured. It is not our intention to escalate the situation. However, if there are military attacks on us, there should be no doubt that it will be met with a very, very firm response. As a neighbor and a close partner, it is important that you have a good understanding of the situation.
Well, the Ministry of External Affairs is holding a press briefing at the moment. Let's cut across live to it.
April, with the barbaric terror attack in Pahalgam, into further context, because there is a certain amount of commentary that has happened with regard to the events since then. And more than the commentary, there has been a lot of disinformation that has been directed at us from across the border. So a few things that I would like you to keep in mind. First of all, there is mention on all sides of escalation. I think the first point that you have to keep in mind is the attack of 22nd April in Pahalgam is the original escalation. ये जो सिलसिला है जो हम देख रहे हैं आज की घटनाओं को लेके, ये 22 अप्रैल के पहलगाम के हमले से शुरू हुआ है. एस्केलेशन वहां पे हुआ है और उस एस्केलेशन का जवाब भारतीय सेना ने, भारतीय फौज ने कल अपने एक्शन से दिया है. Secondly, I want to invite your attention to the involvement of the group calling itself the Resistance Front in these attacks. I pointed this out yesterday that this is a group that is a known front for the well-known Pakistan-based terrorist organization, Lashkar-e-Taiba. The group has been reported earlier. I mentioned to you about the Indian authorities providing information to the UN 1267 Sanctions Monitoring Committee. And in fact, we are going to be meeting with the team again very soon, and we will be providing an update to the information that we have provided earlier. But what is interesting, दिलचस्प बात यह है कि संयुक्त राष्ट्र की सुरक्षा समिति में जब पहलगाम के हमले को लेके एक प्रेस वक्तव्य जारी करने की बात चल रही थी, तो आप सोचिए किस देश ने टीआरएफ का, द रेजिस्टेंस फ्रंट का उसमें मेंशन किया जाना, उसको अपोज किया, पाकिस्तान ने. This was after the fact that the TRF claimed responsibility for this attack not once but twice, within a few hours after the incident on the 22nd of April, and then again on the morning of 23rd April. And it is perhaps only after the full gravity of the incident was realized by its masters and handlers across the border that it was managed to back off from this claim. Obviously, that retraction doesn't convince anybody. तीसरी चीज जो मैं आपसे कहना चाह रहा था, और कर्नल कुरैशी और विंग कमांडर सिंह ने कल भी बड़े स्पष्ट शब्दों में और आज भी आपसे ये बात साझा की है. जो भारतीय रिस्पॉन्स है वो नॉन एस्केलेटरी है, प्रिसाइज है, सटीक है, मेजर्ड है और कंसिडर्ड है. Our intention has not been to escalate matters. We are only responding to the original escalation, as I said, and our response has been targeted, precise, controlled and measured. Only no military targets have been selected. Only terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan has been hit. Now, there are, as I said, a number of issues that have been raised in commentaries, and there's a lot of, as I said, unfounded disinformation and fabrication that has come from across the border. And I would just like to use this opportunity to set the record straight on some of these issues. The first of these is Pakistan trying to wash its hands off any and all involvement with terrorism. I think the Pakistani information minister said there are no terrorists in Pakistan. And I think he was challenged on that in the television program that he was appearing on. But even if I partially repeat myself from yesterday, I think Pakistan's reputation as the epicenter of global terrorism is rooted in a number of instances where concrete evidence is available, not just to India, but to governments and authorities and agencies around the world. There are several terrorist attacks around the world where Pakistani fingerprints have been found. I don't need to belabor the point with regard to this audience about where Osama bin Laden was found and who called him a martyr. Pakistan has also for decades pursued cross-border terrorism into India with impunity. And as I said yesterday also, in order to deliberately mislead the international community, they claimed that the terrorist Sajid Mir was dead. They came under pressure, and Sajid Mir was then brought back to life, arrested, and is now apparently in Pakistani custody. Pakistan is also home to a very large number of UN proscribed as well as UN proscribed terrorists, as well as terrorists proscribed by a number of other governments in the world, including, of course, the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, as well as their leaders, Masood Azhar and Hafiz Mohammed Saeed. आपने देखा होगा हाल ही में पिछले ही कुछ दिनों में पाकिस्तान के रक्षा मंत्री और उनके पूर्व विदेश मंत्री दोनों ने इस बात को माना है कि पाकिस्तान का ऐसे ग्रुप्स के साथ जो रिश्ता है वो क्या रहा है. Both the defense minister and the former foreign minister of Pakistan, I think they've done a more eloquent job of this.
Well, we now are joined by a guest in the form of Major General S.K. Singh, who is a defence expert. Major General, thank you very much for being here with us. We've just heard the MEA speaking there. I want to talk about the final comments that we heard being made regarding terrorists within Pakistan. We've of course seen these precision strikes on terrorist infrastructure. How significant is the terrorist infrastructure within Pakistan? And with calls that Operation Sindoor is still ongoing, how many more military actions do you think will be needed to solve this issue?
You see, first of all, thank you. It's a pleasure to join your channel. This is very, very clear. I mean, there is nothing to hide. The whole international community is aware as to how many camps and which all actual organizations are there, the terrorist organizations which are flourishing within Pakistan. Pakistan has always been on a denial mode and will continue to be on a denial mode. And there are adequate proofs, whether it is with America or the European countries. Everybody has got proof. And the case of Osama bin Laden, how they have been sheltering him and how they have been hiding. And in spite of all the intelligence available, still they couldn't. Americans could not launch a joint operation to handle Osama bin Laden. Finally, they had to go it all alone because there is no belief. The reliability factor on Pakistan is not at all there. They are always in a mode of denial and telling lies. So we don't have to, in fact, give proofs of that. After all, these relatives of Hafiz Saeed, who has been killed in the yesterday's attack, I mean, who are they? That has been done within Bahawalpur and Murid and all these places of all the three organizations, militant organizations existing there. So, I mean, Pakistan keep denying, so that does not hold true. Our aim is that the thing has been started by the Pakistanis themselves, because they were directly involved in the planning. The way the 26 innocent civilians have been killed, it's aghast to note the detailed planning with which they had come. So, involvement of ISI, involvement of Pakistan Army, it's a well-known fact. So it is they who started it, and India had the full right to retaliate. Now they want to retaliate, saying that India had fired across missiles across the international border. So they tried that. I mean, all the missiles which they tried today, they all have been shot down by our S-400 air defense systems. And not only that, in that case, we also had fired missiles, and the Lahore, the Sialkot, the Rawalpindi, both these all these airports, the air defense system of Pakistan has been totally destroyed. The radar system has been destroyed. So it is all up to Pakistan as to what do they want. In case they want escalation, India is always ready for it, and always prepare. Our Indian armed forces are always ready, whether it is across the IV for a full conventional war, or if it is going to be limited to the line of control. The line of control has been hawked right from day one after 22nd of April. So you see the casualties which Pakistanis have done to their own, the so-called Kashmiris whom they claim. The civilians have been killed, 15, 16 of them, including 4, 5 children. Who is to be blamed for this? So the escalation will be there, escalation will continue, and hope so some sense will prevail with Pakistan not to initiate a full-fledged war. Otherwise, they will be totally wiped out from the world map.
Yes, next we'll be joined by Major General Shashi Asthana, who is also a defence expert. I want to build on something that Major General S.K. Singh said there, and looking at, of course, the Pakistani involvement in terrorism. But away from that, we've also had a report from the Indian government that says that at least 15 cities were targeted and the attacks were stopped in the north and the west of India. What's the significance of this development following, of course, these tensions after the devastating 22nd of April terror attack in Pahalgam?
See, the chain of escalation has been started by Pakistan. And as was rightly brought out, the escalation started on 22nd April. That is the first step to escalate. 22nd May, that is the first step by a terror attack on innocent tourists. And that too with a message of a religious discontent. So they tried to brew, they not only killed people, they tried to brew some kind of Hindu-Muslim discontent also. So taking that as very serious provocation, India has launched the attack last night, and that was purely and squarely to the terrorist organizations and their camps. The question is, India repeatedly, it's not the first attack, repeatedly had told Pakistan to cooperate, and I think the world has also told them not to have terrorists on their soil, but they refuse to do it. If they cannot do it, and if they cannot move out the terror camps and wipe out the terror camps, then we have no choice. We are suffering, and therefore we have to do it. It is a self-defense exercise which we did, and that was non-provocative, and there was no military target, there was no civilian target. This was a responsible act by India. But I would say the response of Pakistan to this attack was that they engaged military targets in 15 townships along the border states, that is in the north and west. Now, also they have hiked up the firing on line of control, where we have lost certain civilians. Now, if that be so, then they have to be responded, and we have to actually now target the military machinery which can help them in firing. So the air defenses have been targeted, and to make sure that firstly their townships also become vulnerable. They feel the pain of being vulnerable and a civil area being vulnerable for the Indian air strikes, and they see some sense. And thereafter, we are very clear. We are in no mood to escalate. We don't want to fight a war. But at the same time, if Pakistan wants to escalate, we have no problems. We are absolutely prepared, and they will get befitting response every time, and the response will be proportional and responsible. In both cases, we have been proportional and responsible, and not targeting at the civilian casualties. So, as far as India is concerned, the chain, we don't want to climb next step in the escalation ladder till the time Pakistan forces us to climb the next step in the escalation ladder. Back to you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to head back to Major General S.K. Singh, and I want to touch back on these escalations along the line of control. We've been reporting for the last fortnight or so following the devastating terror attack in Pelgam that small arms fire has been reported. What's the significance of this escalation now to mortar violations from Pakistan and also more heavy artillery usage along the line of control?
You see, this as it is, it was expected, and it is on the expected lines after that incident which took place on 22nd of April. The LOC was activated, and we were expecting that escalation up the ladder, starting from the small arms, slowly coming onto the mortars, and the higher caliber of artillery guns will be going to be used. I mean, that will happen. So India is also prepared for that. Now there could be two things. Firstly, it is he's just trying to retaliate in the sense that the LOC firing for two main reasons. One is to degrade our own powered post, which actually he has not done because he is firing on the civilian villagers. And secondly, it could be even for infiltrating more terrorists so that to create unstable situation close to the border areas. I mean, that is also not going to work out because now the surveillance grid, as also the overground workers who have been the local supporters who have been guiding them across the LOC and taking them to the various places for the hideouts. I mean, then now that actually has already been wiped out. That was the first phase of anti-terrorism operation which India did, so that in future, at least they do not get immediate support from the locals. So that was done. So this escalation will be there, and befitting reply in terms of artillery, we have much higher caliber weapons as far as artillery is concerned, and there will be no holds bar once the caliber escalation of the ladder takes place.
Yes, Major General S.K. Singh, thank you very much for joining us. Major General Shashi Asthana, I will come to you before we end this ongoing discussion amid rising tensions. We know, of course, there has been conversation from world leaders. We know that the Saudi foreign minister has been in India. We also know that, of course, the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, has been in Pakistan and now India. Given the global sort of condemnation of the terrorist attack and then also calling for de-escalation, what pressure now needs to be placed on Pakistan? You said yourself here that, of course, these escalations are being met by India, but they are coming from Pakistan. What does the global community need to do and say to Pakistan to stop these escalating tensions?
There are many options, and there are many. It has to be a multi-domain exercise because, and we have to use all elements of national power to put pressure on Pakistan to shun terror and give up terrorism. And at least as far as India is concerned, don't stop the proxy war and sending terrorists to India. You would have seen certain diplomatic measures have been taken. We are reaching out to all the capitals in the world. We also took some other measures, that is in terms of Indus Water Treaty, holding it in abeyance. We also looked at a large number of diplomatic measures, whether it was in terms of visas, because far too many people were coming here for medical treatment, and we couldn't distinguish as to who is a terrorist and who is a supporter and who is an innocent person. We were finding it quite difficult. Similarly, a large number of the trade has stopped. The communication has stopped. The borders were sealed. So all these things were done. The other issue is that as far as India is concerned, certainly we would like to put some kind of economic pressure too. We urge the IMF and World Bank and other loaning agencies that whatever money you are giving, just imagine, have a look at the profile of Pakistan. Their GDP is decreasing, but their defense budget is increasing. And their terrorism budget is increasing further. So if the money has to be used in a manner to provoke the neighbors or to and also to give shall I say lifeline to the terrorists, then I think the whole world should take that responsibility of not fomenting terrorism or creating a situation or economic situation in the country which brews terrorism. So these are some of the measures which India is taking and would continue to work on it because we want a terror-free region as well as a terror-free world. And we are all looking at a global situation wherein the terrorist countries and their sponsors, they are called out. And we urge all the countries to join this because terrorism is not a problem of a specific country. It is a global problem. And like it or not, a maximum number of UN designated terrorists and maximum number of UN designated terror entities, they are in Pakistan. And they are, if you join the FPAC region, maximum number of entities you will find in that region.
Major,
so,
apologies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, back to you.
Major General Shashi Asthana, sorry for cutting you off firstly, but thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your insight. Of course, the developing situation and the ongoing tensions between India and Pakistan will be covered here on NewsX World. We move now to Europe, and black smoke once again poured from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel today, confirming that cardinals have failed in their second and third ballots to elect a new pope. Thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square responded with a mix of applause, disappointment and prayer as the wait for Pope Francis's successor continues. The 133 cardinals locked in conclave since Wednesday evening are required to reach a 2/3 majority, that's 89 votes, to elect the 267th Pope. So far, that threshold has proved elusive. Sequestered away from the world, they communicate their progress by burning their ballot papers and sending up smoke through the chimney of the frescoed 14th century chapel. The first black smoke on Wednesday evening arrived some 3 hours and 15 minutes after the cardinals closed the doors, greeted with some disappointment by the assembled crowds. But many people returned on Thursday, where the red-robed prelates held 2 more ballots in the morning. They were scheduled to hold another 2 in the afternoon, and then 4 more on Friday, unless a pope is elected sooner. Well, joining us to discuss the ongoing process during this conclave to elect the 267th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church is Father Robinson Rodriguez, a PRO Catholic Bishops' Conference of India. Thank you very much, Father Robinson, for being here with us. Let's first look at this vote that is ongoing. Of course, crowds in the Vatican and the wider Rome region, along with Catholics across the world, are waiting for that signal of white smoke. How long do you think people will be waiting?
Pope Francis has given us a beautiful message that we are people of hope. So we hope and we wait, praying and hoping for the new Pope. Whoever the new Pope is going to be, he too will, I'm sure, show us the way of hope. And as the people of hope, we will wait. We will wait, praying, and again with the expression of joy to welcome the new Pope.
Yes, Father Robinson, of course, the recent papal conclaves have taken between 2 and 3 days, so we could be expecting that white smoke shortly. I want to look ahead now to what the next Pope will need to do. Of course, the global instability, we've spoken already on this programme about the ongoing tensions in South Asia, also in Eastern Europe and the Middle East as well. What challenges will there be that the next Pope will need to overcome, given the current instability globally?
The establishing of peace in different parts of the world, I think that is going to be a great challenge, because we see many countries are getting involved in wars, and lack of peace will surely affect entire humanity. And whoever is going to be the next Pope, he is not only for the Catholics, but a spiritual father for the whole world. Whole world looks at a Pope when he speaks, when he says something. And like Pope Francis, the new Pope, also I believe will have a challenge will be of establishing peace. Also, the environmental issues which are going to affect our future, that will be another challenge for the new Pope.
Yes, Father Robinson, you mentioned Pope Francis there. Of course, his more than a decade as the pontiff has been celebrated during this mourning period, also during his funeral as well. What do you think that the next Pope will need to take from Pope Francis into their time as the pontiff?
No, see, for me to suggest that what the next Pope will have to take from Pope Francis is not in fact appropriate. Pope, one who is going to be elected, surely well thought of, and a person will be of great reflections. He will be able to lead us all together, including me and including all other people. He will be leading us all together on the path of the Lord that the Lord has shown us.
Yes, Father Robinson, let me rephrase that question then. Let's look at Pope Francis's time as pontiff and celebrate the things that he did right.
Pardon me, I didn't get.
Well, rather than looking at what can be taken from the previous Pope into the next Pope, let's have a look at and celebrate what Pope Francis did right during his time as pontiff.
You see, Pope Francis, he worked for the marginalized. His whole entire papacy was known for his preferential love for the poor, for the downtrodden, for the migrants, and those who were for many years neglected. So that was his entire papacy, and his love, preferential love, I should say, for the poor. So that is something great that we celebrated during his papacy. And when we speak about next Pope taking forward, not only from Pope Francis, but so many popes throughout the history have contributed in their own way in different fields. So not only from Pope Francis, but from all the popes, from the very first, we know, Saint Peter, from him, and then from all other so many popes that we have seen in the history, they have contributed in their own way, and the next Pope will contribute in his own way, taking something new from these all past popes.
Yes, and Father Robinson, to bring an end to our discussion as we await the next vote and the smoke signal, I want to look at the 133 cardinals who are taking part in this conclave. There is such diversity. We know around 70 countries are represented, 15 for the first time. Do you think this could have any influence on the voting that is taking place in secrecy?
The only thing which will influence conclave is the prayer and the Holy Spirit. No other thing will influence conclave. It's not only secret; it's a sacred conclave. not only secret, we often miss that sacredness of the conclave. So in prayer and under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, this whole process takes place. And therefore, we all believe, it's our faith, that whatever happens there, it happens under the inspiration and guidance of the Holy Spirit.
Father Robinson Rodriguez, thank you ever so much for joining us today. We will, of course, be across all of the developments from the ongoing conclave, and we will bring you any of the latest alerts from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. We bring you some breaking news now, and the EU has threatened to target US cars and planes among a raft of products worth $107 billion if negotiations with US President Donald Trump's team fail to avert a trade war. Brussels is also preparing a WTO complaint over US tariffs. EU officials say all options, including targeting US big tech, remain on the table. Moving on now, Russia and China have slammed US President Donald Trump's plans for an Iron Dome missile defense system as deeply destabilizing in a joint statement issued after talks between President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Moscow. This comes after Chinese President Xi was welcomed by Russian President Putin at the Kremlin on Thursday for a 4-day state visit. Meanwhile, Russia's war in Ukraine enters its 4th year. Putin credited the combat brotherhood between Russia and China from the Second World War for their strong ties. He emphasised that their partnership is based on equality, mutual benefit and long-term goals, not short-term agendas. President Xi Jinping said China's relationship with Russia injects positive energy into a world in turmoil. He added that their cooperation brings stability and positive influence to the global situation. Xi further called the talks extremely fruitful and cordial. Let's listen in to the two leaders.
Вместе с китайскими друзьями твердо стоим на страже исторической правды, защищаем память о событиях военных лет, противодействуем современным проявлениям неонацизма и милитаризма. Мы развиваем наши связи во благо народов обеих стран и не против кого бы то ни было. Наши отношения носят равноправный, взаимовыгодный и неконъюнктурный характер.
Well, joining us to discuss these developments from Xi and Putin's meeting in Moscow is Gilbert Doctorow, a Russian affairs expert who is joining us from Brussels in Belgium. Gilbert, thank you ever so much for being here with us. Let's first look at this cooperation between China and Russia and these talks on a 4-day state visit for President Xi Jinping. What's the significance of the alliance between China and Russia?
The alliance is important in every way. It has given diplomatic support to Russia in international organizations. It has provided Russia with increased revenues from its sales, particularly of hydrocarbons, but not only, to China during this period when its other markets in Western Europe were shut down. It has given Russia a place of great importance in the forming multipolar world, which both countries say is their objective in international relations. It is to be noted that Mr. Putin quite exceptionally said publicly several weeks ago that Xi would be the main guest at the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the victory in Europe. I think that was surprising because it surely must have had a role in Prime Minister Modi's decision not to come. And that is sad. There are those of us who hoped that the event in Moscow tomorrow would be a context for a kind of new Yalta, that is a meeting of major powers to decide on the new structure of international relations that are based on realism, the realistic school of interests of states, and not on abstract values of a humanitarian nature that the United States has made the basis of its foreign policy officially. Unfortunately, the designation of Mr. Xi in this uniquely high position, I think, worked against the interests of a group meeting of great powers in Moscow, but so be it.
Yes, Gilbert, I would like to look at the statement that was made, talking about positive energy in a world of turmoil, given that Russia are involved with a war with Russia and China are involved in several tensions regionally. What do you think is meant by this?
Well, I don't think we have to ask that question too deeply, considering the disruptive behavior every day of Mr. Trump in the United States. He is busy battering down many of the traditional institutions that were guiding U.S. foreign policy. And yet at the same time, he insists that he will not be a war president and that he is not going to enter into new wars, which is a positive contribution. But nonetheless, the basic inputs of the Trump administration to international affairs have been disruptive. His tariff war has been announced a few weeks ago in a chaotic manner, has been immensely disruptive. And both Russia and China have stability and evolutionary development of relations as their main theses for carrying out foreign policy. So in the view of leaders of both countries, stability is primary. And what Mr. Trump is doing is considered to be disruptive, revolutionary, as chaotic as anything in the Russian experience Mr. Gorbachev did. And Gorbachev's running Russia was not very successful. The Russians view what Trump is doing as being similar to that. They don't expect great things to happen in the States. They do hope that his wish for peace will be guiding his actions, although everyone notes that his efforts to create a peace in the Russia-Ukraine situation is not matched by his behavior till now in the Middle East, which has been inflammatory by total support for Israel rather than pacifying.
Yes, Gilbert, we will, of course, come on to Donald Trump. You will be staying with us because we now move on and thousands of patriotic Russians are expected to line the streets of Moscow on May the 9th as thanks. And intercontinental ballistic missile launchers Rumble will pass in the victory parade. President Vladimir Putin is using the occasion to project a return to the global stage, having invited several prominent world leaders, including China's Xi Jinping and Brazil's Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has condemned the parade, calling it a parade of cynicism. In a sharp rebuke, and to quote, Zelensky said, "Tomorrow the atrocities of the Nazis will be brought up by the organiser of mass graves." Meanwhile, Russia claims it's holding fire, but Ukraine says the guns have never stopped. The Kremlin says its forces are observing a 3-day unilateral ceasefire ordered by President Vladimir Putin. The truce was meant to align with Victory Day celebrations in Moscow, but Ukraine says it's nothing but a farce. Kyiv has reported 734 ceasefire violations and over 60 Russian assault operations, all just hours into the 3-day truce. Ukraine officials say that Russian forces are attacking across the entire front line, including guided bomb strikes in the northern Sumy region. Russia, meanwhile, accuses Ukraine of breaking the truce first, saying its troops are only responding to continued hostilities. Ukraine says it will keep its allies informed and asks to create international pressure on Russia to agree to peace, as fighting shows no sign of slowing down despite the Kremlin's claims. Well, Gilbert, Dr. O is once again with us, a Russian affairs expert joining us from Brussels. Of course, here Ukraine saying that Russia are violating a ceasefire that they have come up with. We know that there hasn't been a fixed agreement with Ukraine on this 3-day ceasefire, with Ukraine instead calling for a longer 30-day ceasefire. What's your response to these allegations from Kyiv?
I cannot say that they are correct. I cannot say that they're incorrect. We have no reliable, objective reports. The Russians, of course, are making counterclaims. However, when you look at the one-day Easter truce the Russians also unilaterally declared, and which the Ukrainians never formally accepted, de facto, despite violations claims by both sides, the Russian military command observed at the end of it that there was a significant reduction in hostilities during that truce. And we may expect, despite the remarks that you have just quoted, that in the course of these 3 days, hostilities, fighting on the front lines will diminish significantly and far fewer people will die. That being said, I think we have to look in a different direction from the front lines in the Donbass or at the border of the Kursk region, which the Ukrainians are trying to force again and again. The real issue for tomorrow will be drones and drone attacks on the airports of Russia, which they have done in the last 2 days with very disruptive effect. And most especially, will they do anything to attack one or another of the official parades in Moscow or in other major cities of Russia? If they do that, then it's entirely possible that the Russians will respond with devastating use of the Oreshnik in Kiev itself. And we may see the end of the Zelensky regime in 24 hours from now. Anything is possible. Unfortunately, the people around Zelensky are terrorists. They are demented. They are not normal people.
Okay, Gilbert, I'm going to cut you off from that narrative there. What I do want to look at is something that you've mentioned just there, and that is the apparent risk on Moscow given these Victory Day celebrations. Do you think that there is a risk that has been taken by Vladimir Putin, obviously an ongoing war with Ukraine, given the fact that so many dignitaries and world leaders will be present?
There is no way to provide 100% security against drone attacks. If the forces, the armed forces, or the specifically violent units within the Ukrainian armed forces, the Azov battalion and other units, should defy the orders given by Zelensky, which is possible, and proceed to make attacks on the parades, any of the parades, there will be hell to pay, and the war will escalate in an unforeseeable, unpredictable direction. The war is going very badly for Ukraine, and they are under big pressure from the Trump administration to conclude a peace that will be disadvantageous for Kiev, namely to concede the loss of the territories that the Russians occupied. So the situation is critical in Kiev, and it is entirely possible that something irrational will be done to attack these parades. If that happens, the Russians have stated publicly that they will use devastating force against Kiev, the city of Kiev, and the decision-making centers there. So watch the next 24 hours, not just for a glorious parade, but for a possible turning point in this war and in international relations.
Yes, Gilbert, I want to pick up on that phrase, turning point, and given that there have been negotiations towards a longer ceasefire, the US and Ukraine have both been in support of a longer 30-day ceasefire. Why isn't Putin in support of that move?
Because it only supports the Ukrainians. The Russians have nothing to gain. The idea of a 30-day ceasefire is a distraction from the bigger issue of how this war ends. It keeps at bay the statement by Kiev of what it wants at the end of negotiations. What it wants at the end of negotiations is a Russian capitulation, which is utter nonsense. It is against the laws of gravity. And to avoid saying this nonsense, they put all attention on a 30-day ceasefire. From the Russian perspective, that can only serve as a distraction from what really counts, ending the war, and a distraction that enables Kiev to receive much needed military supplies and new manpower and rotation of their soldiers from the front lines. That is against the interests of the ongoing Russian advances. So we're speaking about very different concepts of what comes next. What's to come next is an agreement on how the war ends. And in implementation of that, you have a ceasefire. Not a ceasefire without any agreement on how the war ends.
Yes, Gilbert, absolutely. Thank you for that insight there. Let's now look ahead and look past these Victory Day celebrations. Of course, US involvement, European involvement as well. There's been comments from China on the war and, of course, confirmation of North Korean involvement. What's needed from the global diplomatic space in order to bring an end to this conflict? And is that something that you think Vladimir Putin wants?
Of course he's open to it. Of course Russia is ready to accept the participation of major powers of all varieties in finding and implementing a lasting peace with Ukraine. So that is a given. The problem that we have is that international opinion is not realized or implemented in this day and age. The whole world is for peace there, but is not doing anything that can enable or facilitate a peace other than the efforts being made presently by President Trump. I think the bigger problem, the weakness of the international community today, the weakness of the United Nations, is demonstrated by the catastrophe in Gaza, by the genocide in Gaza, which no amount of condemnation by the global decision makers is able to put an end to. So a much bigger crisis is ongoing in parallel to the Russian-Ukraine war, where we see that international opinion counts for nothing, sad to say. So we needn't be surprised that the only activity that is heading in a direction of peace between Russia and Ukraine is Mr. Trump's. The rest of the world is standing by, sympathizing with one side or another, but doing nothing to end the war.
Gilbert, just as we end our discussion, I would like to look at a joint statement that has been made, Russia confirming its commitment to the One China principle, recognising Taiwan as an integral part of China. Of course, the US have historically been aligned on the other side of this. Is this further causing a divide, do you think, between Russia and the US, given a somewhat of a breakdown in recent friendly conversations?
The two are divided only by the way that the United States has quietly walked away from the commitments that President Nixon made in the 1970s to precisely the one China solution. So the United States accepted the one China solution. Formally, it is still with it. But the present reality is, going back the last 20 years, that the United States has given ever greater military assistance to Taiwan and political assistance to Taiwan to continue the aspirations, the ambitions of the Taiwanese to remain an independent force and not to reunite with China. So it is the United States moving away from the Nixon policy that lasted for 40 years that has created the crisis that we see now, where China is very keen to solve the problem in the next several years.
Yes, Gilbert, unfortunately, I apologise having to cut you off. Thank you so much for joining us on both topics of discussion. We are unfortunately out of time with that. We briefly move to the Middle East, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says 21 hostages in Gaza are confirmed alive, but there's uncertainty about 3 others. His comments follow US President Donald Trump's recent claim that 24 were alive. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum is urging Benjamin Netanyahu to halt the war and secure the return of all 59 hostages. Let's listen in to what the Israeli Prime Minister said.
אנחנו יודעים בוודאות שיש 21 חיים, על זה אין ויכוח. יש עוד 3 שלצערי יש ספק אם הם חיים, ולכן הדבר הוודאי שאנחנו אומרים 21, אנחנו לא מוותרים על אף אחד. גם לא על 3 הנותרים וגם על האחרים, כל האחרים. אנחנו רוצים להחזיר את כולם הביתה.
Meanwhile, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 33 people were killed in Israeli airstrikes on a restaurant and market in Gaza City. The Thailandi restaurant had doubled as a kitchen for the displaced. Graphic images show victims, including children. Gaza's Hamas-run authorities accuse Israel of targeting civilians. Hospitals say 59 have died in strikes since Tuesday. And in East Jerusalem, the UN says Israel has shut down 3 UN RWA-run schools amid the growing tensions. That is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more of the latest breaking news from across the world.
फाउंडर और संसद में